Let me give you a simple tip today. We cannot be right with God until we are right with others. Hello, I'm Chuck Swindoll. If you are resentful of the way someone has treated you, if you're holding it against that person, hoping for the time you can retaliate, you need to ask God to free you from that bondage. The secret, plain and simple, forgiveness. Claim God's power to forgive through Jesus Christ. Begin here. Ask His forgiveness for cultivating that deep root of bitterness within your own heart, and then count on Him to do that. Letting go of that bitterness and watching the rest of your relationships open up, including your relationship with God, one of the greatest joys in life.
Pastor and teacher Chuck Swindoll. Visit Insight for Living's website at insight.org.
Are you facing yet another holiday season alone? When was the last time you met someone you were really excited about? Hi, I'm Jackie Dorman. If you're looking for the answers to these questions, I've got a solution. I'm personally inviting you to join me and thousands of women just like you to my free Married in 12 Months challenge that's happening now at lovestories.com. Just sign up for my free Married in 12 Months challenge at lovestories.com. That's lovestories.com.
Hello there, it's David James. If your New Year's resolution is to improve your health, KKLA and AMA 70 wants to help you keep your resolve. Join me at the KKLA AMA 70 Health Fair, Saturday, January 29th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Pasadena First Church of the Nazarene. This free family event features the medical resources of City of Hope with no-cost health screenings like BMI and blood pressure, information on senior caretaking, family and women's health, the latest COVID information, workshops, so much more, all available free. Plus exhibitors and vendors, prizes, a free continental breakfast from Hope Cafe and Catering in Pasadena, yummy, and there's a whole lot more. The KKLA AMA 70 Health Fair, January 29th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Pasadena First Church of the Nazarene. This is a free family event. Visit our station website for complete details. Sponsored in part by Dr. Richard David, Prostate Services, SoCal Reverse Mortgage, and WellCare. Every Saturday night, 7:30 with Real Life with Gina Pastori.
And David James.
We have fun talking about real life, Gina.
We do. We like to talk about the things that you don't like to talk about.
Uh-oh.
Like the need to move forward after grief and how painful that can be. Ways to care for your soul. How about identity in a social media world? Ooh.
Real Life, Gina Pastori and David James every Saturday night, 7:30.
Don't miss it.
Listen on Odyssey. KKLA-FM Los Angeles. Find hope here.
The Bible Info Brokers is live and sponsored by Living by the Word Ministries on 99.5 KKLA.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Living by the Word Ministries presentation of the Bible Information Brokers with Daryl Easy D. Fulton. That's me, with Eric receiving your phone call. Gabe is making sure all this engineering stuff is working properly. And we have PCH, Professor Craig Hawkins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we did take a lot of time on the first side of the broadcast, first hour of the broadcast, to give him information that we felt and know is very important to this ministry and to you to give you a privilege to participate. We're going to do this right now. We're going to do the most important thing that we can ever do right now. Then right after that, I'm going to dive into this Facebook questions. I'm going to get back and give you the information whereby you can call in. Matter of fact, I'm going to give that information now. Get those calls set up. Give you the information where you can send a question in by email, Facebook, or tweeting in Messenger. Here's what you do. Right now, call Eric. A few people called in. I see your question. We'll deal with that when we get a chance. But if you call back in, we can get you on the air. So make sure we got your question right. The number to call Eric right now, the main teammate that makes this whole broadcast go, is Eric. Call him right now at 888-995-5552. 888-995-5552. Now, every other format we have to get your questions on live today and even during the week is Facebook, email, tweet, messenger, and you can do all that by the format. The various formats are Bible Info Brokers, same address, Bible Info Brokers, email, tweet, Facebook, and messenger, Bible Info Brokers. Get those questions to us now. We want to deal with those questions on this side of the break now. But before we get to those questions, Craig, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tee this ball up for you, and I need you to really go put on your old baseball date. I remember you used to be a pretty good hitter, if I understand correctly. I need you to hit this ball right out the park by letting the people know how serious it is.
I was a legend in my own mind.
That's where it starts, brother. You know how I go. You know I got tennis and golf. Definitely a legend in my own mind. But you know what? What is not a legend, what is the reality of a life is we're going to live and we're going to die. We've had, and with the gentleman, Sidney Poitier, man, 94 years old, losing a lot of famous people in the world and a lot of people not so famous. We're not promised tomorrow. The importance of making a decision this side of the grave is ultimate. Craig, please tell them why.
Well, sure. I think of Betty White. I think John Madden, of course. You know, being a football fan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reality is we're all going to perish should the Lord tarry, should the Lord Jesus Christ delay His second coming. We're all going to have our own personal eschatology. We're all going to go meet Him. And that's reality. I don't care whether you like it or not, or whether you find that pleasant or not. It's reality. It's like having to plan for retirement. You can say, "Well, I don't want to ever retire," but sooner or later you'll have to, even if your retirement is frankly you die. But, Daryl, we're all looking for fulfillment. We're all looking for contentment. We're all looking for meaning, for purpose. Now, some of us are more social than others. We all get our needs met differently, but we're all looking for fulfillment. If not, you need some serious couch time, and we have counselors standing by to help you because you've got something wrong with you. If you don't want the best for yourself and your loved ones, there's something wrong with you. Literally, you're mentally ill. That's what I'm trying to say. The reality is we're all looking for purpose, meaning, significance, identity, and value, and that we are worthwhile. And you can try sex, drugs, rock and roll. You can try everything and anything you want to put it in that God-shaped void in your heart, and it's never going to satisfy. No amount of drugs, no amount of relationships, no amount of money, fame, fortune, whatever is going to fulfill you, is going to complete you. I mean, I know coming up, tomorrow night, national championship, in America, the college football, the League Division I, if you will. I'm looking at that's great. I wish I could compete at that level when I was younger, but I couldn't. I was never that good. But the point is, I don't begrudge those guys, but there's something more important than that. Even the team that wins the national championship, whether Bama or Georgia, right? I mean, I get it. But you can be a winner ultimately and eternally. And this is no hype. This is no hyperbole. This is the reality. This is stone cold reality, is that there is a God who made you, and you were made for fellowship with that God, with that being Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God the Son, second person of the Holy Trinity. You were meant to have fellowship with God. Life in that more abundantly. I didn't say an easy life. I'm not saying a rose garden life, but life that is rich, that is fulfilling, that brings contentment, that allows you to flourish as who you are as a human being, is only found in a relationship with God. Not only in this life, but the afterlife. And no matter how good your life may be, it's not as good as fellowship with God. And no matter how bad it is, it can get worse, and that is a Christless eternity. My friend, start of the new year, calendar-wise, it's time to get right with God. More importantly than turning over a new leaf or a New Year's resolution or whatever, it's time to get right with God. It's time to acknowledge you need God. You need a relationship with Him. Not because you're weak and you're a loser and you just can't do well in life. You may be at the pinnacle of your profession. You may be at the highest levels, money-making, prestige-wise, whatever. But you're still empty. And here's what I can say. I can say this softly. I don't need to yell. I don't need to be theatrical. You're empty. You know it. I know it. Anybody with any sense knows it. No matter, even if you're at the top of the heap in Hollywood, if you will, you're still empty inside. And only a relationship with Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior will bring meaning and significance in this life, let alone in eternity. Friend, it's time to quit running from God and run to God. It's time to acknowledge your need for God. It's time to ask for forgiveness. It's kind of like, Daryl, my last point here is, it's kind of like if you have a spat with a loved one, with a friend or loved ones in your family or not. But something you care about, you somehow get into some type of disagreement. There's this alienation, there's separation, what have you. And sometimes we're the ones that either caused it or at least significantly contributed to it. And there's a point in time when you have to humble yourself and say, you know what, I'm sorry. I either caused this or I contributed to it. I'm involved. I'm guilty of that. I'm asking for forgiveness. Will you forgive me? I'm owning my stuff. And you know what God asks of you, my friend? He doesn't ask you to climb Mount, Everest, or go to the bottom of the Marian, Gulf in the sea, if you will, trench, that is. God says, admit it. Admit it, you've messed up. Why? Because you'll never be healthy and whole until you acknowledge your need for God, for Jesus Christ. Admit you've messed up. Turn from your sin. Turn towards God. And God will forgive you on the account of the finished work of Jesus Christ. It's time to quit living in la-la land. It's time to quit living in non-reality. It's time to acknowledge your sin, your imperfections, your failures. That is, you're not perfect like the rest of us, and you'd have to be to get fellowship with God. Acknowledge that, ask for forgiveness, and right now, wherever you are, driving, about to take off, just landed, I don't care, whatever you're doing, God will forgive you where you are right now. Now, yes, get into a Bible-teaching, believing church. That doesn't save you. That'll sure help you grow as a Christian. But it's about acknowledging your sin, your imperfections, and your need for forgiveness, and trusting in Jesus Christ to do just that. My friend, time to get real, time to really live, to find life, as Paul says, that is truly life.
Wow, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, join us with the Bible Information Brokers. We want to answer your question from a biblical perspective. Facebook guys, we're going to get to your questions momentarily. I got them all written down here, about 3 or 4 Facebook questions. Douglas, you're going to be up next. I'm going to invite the people to call in. 888-995-5552. 888-995-5552. We're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. And so give a call. 888-995-5552. Eric will set you up. Everything else is Bible Info Brokers, Facebook, email, tweet, or what have you. Bible Info Brokers. Let's go to our good friend Doug in Los Angeles. Doug, thanks for holding on and calling in, brother.
Is the will man's explanation of the randomness of life?
One more time with that. Do you want an explanation of man's randomness?
Man's explanation of the randomness of life.
Did you get that, PCH?
I'm not sure that I did. I think Doug's asking about how do you explain the randomness of life?
The way man does it. How does that level off with what God says?
Yeah, but maybe he could help me because there's several different ways to approach this, obviously, and I'm not quite sure which avenue he's addressing this from or wants us to address it.
Doug, are you asking
help
about?
Us out there, Doug?
Go ahead, Doug.
Is God's will man's explanation for the randomness of life?
Well, I think I understood you. Let me take a shot at it. Something else. I think there's a great question here. No doubt, you always have good questions, Doug. But even if I'm not addressing yours, I think there's still one to be hit here. And if not, then I will modify this. But God doesn't own us an explanation, but I would argue life isn't that random. I mean, if you're really going to allow people in some significant sense to have free will, some things will appear random, but maybe only because sometimes people's choices aren't very rational. They're random. So I don't really see that randomness to life. I see a God in the Bible who is in control of everything, even the drawing of lots, something that would seem like it'd be totally capricious, totally happenstance. God says he's in control of that. I'm not saying God causes directly every bad thing that happens, but he allows it. He allows us to do that and do that to one another. That's what happens if people have some significant sense of freedom, at least at a human level. But my point is, so God doesn't owe us an explanation for anything. Actually, we owe him an explanation, and we're all going to appear before him either in Christ and let Christ do the explaining of how we've been redeemed by his finished work, or we'll be trying to explain our nincompoopishness, our sins, to God. The only one who is owed an explanation is God. We think he owes us stuff. He doesn't. And so I'm going to argue God doesn't owe us an explanation. And number two, I'm not really convinced life is at random. The only thing that's random is an evolutionary worldview, which says that basically humans are the product of mindless, purposeless chance. We are an accident, basically, not waiting to happen, but that did happen. But the problem is science doesn't back that up. I think of the work of people like Douglas Axe, your namesake, Doug, and his work on mutations and how that random mutations don't lead to life and better forms of life. It leads to death. Mutations are almost always bad. In fact, not just bad, they're often fatal. And so I don't think you necessarily ask about this, but the very mechanism that's used to explain life, which is randomness, total blind chance, doesn't explain anything. I mean, anytime you do some type of random experiment, all you get is random results. Surprise! So at any rate, that's how I think I would attempt to answer your question. I hope I kind of came close, Doug, to what you were asking.
Well, thank you for the explanation. I also want to thank the Lord for giving me the situational awareness of avoiding being mugged this evening a mile south of the radio station.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Man. You all right, brother?
Yeah, I'm okay. I had the situational awareness to avoid being jumped.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, sometimes, I'm no crime expert, but my understanding is many times criminals, especially people that are going to roll or mug, they're looking for people who are not watching their surroundings, don't know where they are and or are not aware that someone's watching them. They see them as an easy mark because the people aren't even expecting them to mug them.
Be aware.
As well.
I'd like to thank the Lord.
Yes.
We thank him for you too, brother. Really appreciate that, Doug. Thank you much for your call, brother. Doug saying something like that, Craig, just reminds me of how the brevity of life is disappointed on the man who wants to die and dealing with the randomness that Doug was talking about and how you were addressing it. The whole book of Ecclesiastes talk about, the futility of life, maybe the shortness of it, the brevity of it, I don't know if what the word is, yin and yang, or just the opposites of how things go, some highs and lows of life. But one thing it shows that by us being put in this time, and whatever time is, and how we operate, move in time, things do have a time. Things do have a purpose. Things do have a reason for everything. I mean, we make cliches. I'm going to talk about that a little later. But I'm going to get to the Facebook question. I want to deal with some cliches a little bit later on, Craig, as we finish up the questions that we have. And I want to dispel some, and the ones that need to be spelled contextually correct, and ones that need to be accentuated because they are correct. This cliches, I just have a problem with people just saying things and not really figuring out what thus saith the Word of God about it. And that's why we do what we do on this broadcast. So let me go right to the question from Facebook. But before I do, Eric, okay, I'm going to get you busy. 888-995-5552. 888-995-5552. Call Eric right now. Full board, wide open. Give him a call. He can receive your call. He will receive your call, and he will not hang up on you. He will set you up to get on a live air with us to ask your question. 888-995-5552. Now, PCH, we got a couple of questions about COVID, and I'm gonna deal with them both at the same time. I mean, not at the same time, but as we do it, because they're very, very interestingly put. And Timothy is asking this question because he said he talked to us about it in 2020, and he said he thought that it was COVID was a coincidence. And I don't know if he's alluding to the fact that maybe you said it was a coincidence or believe that it was a coincidence some years ago. And I'm saying years ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. If you remember saying something like that, what say you now after 20 months of this COVID situation? Is it all a coincidence or what? That's number one. And Angie's question is dealing with more about the idea of being forced because of COVID to do the various things our government is having us to do and how we have to really make major adjustments in our life because of COVID. So sort of like the two questions together. Let's get into it.
Okay, so who was the first one? Is that a Facebook question?
Yeah, both of these are Facebook questions from Timothy and Angie.
Angie.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yeah, I don't recall. Maybe I did, but I'm getting older and forgetting more and more. However, in good conscience, I can say I don't recall saying it was just a coincidence. I don't think I've ever held that view. I think it's sad. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's causally. There's a number of factors that would explain why it's here, but I'm not going to go down that road just because time's sake, and it won't solve the fact that it is here. So that's number one. I don't think I don't know. I don't believe in coincidence, actually. I'm pretty clear about that. There's no coincidences. I call them quinkydinks. That's my word.
I never heard you use that one. I'm glad you didn't use it face to face. I will still be laughing.
No, I'm sorry. And then Angie's comment?
Angie's comment is in regards to how do you feel about what's being forced on us in relationship to COVID, the shots. She has just the shots, but I'm just going with the mask and everything that is being more or less mandated or forced.
Well, a couple things, and these are just my thoughts. I don't claim to be the views expressed do not represent those
exactly.
And you, Brian, or Eric
right. These are
or
yours.
anyone else.
I'll give mine.
But look, I mean, at one level, I'm more than happy to wear a mask. I just got back from Chicago. You got to wear a mask. Up in L.A., you're supposed to be wearing a mask, and I don't mind doing that. I just forget. It's like, where am I? Orange County or whatever. I got to remember, do I need to wear a mask or not? But if it makes people feel comfortable, then I gladly wear a mask because it's a minimal inconvenience for me. Because I'm not out running track or trying to do some, athletic sport either with a mask on. I think that's pretty silly. I mean, the oxygen adjacent issue and all that stuff. But so I have no problem trying to accommodate myself to those around me, especially those and there are people who are literally phobic. Now, if you have comorbidity, conditions, I understand that you can and should be very concerned about COVID. I had it. I've had worse cases of the flu, okay? My family's had it. All of us were minimally sick. I mean, maybe me the most, but even then it didn't. I've had worse cases of the flu, as I've already said. But I do appreciate some people's concerns. People think is COVID related to the Antichrist? No, I don't think so at all. But what I think it is related to, in the end times, is the taking of our freedoms, of wanting to track people in the name of health. Francis Schaeffer, a great thinker, talked about these type of issues. How in the name of health and safety, we'll give up our freedoms. And so, they want to be able to track us. They want to be able to mandate we have to take the vaccine. Look, I know people who had the vaccine, and in fact, one of my sisters is still sick. So 6 months later, and the doctor she goes to a number of patients, and it's had the same conditions related to the vaccine. So it didn't help her much. You can say, well, if she took one for the team, yeah, it's easy for you to say. I know people, not Daryl, I'm not just somebody who knows somebody. I know people who've died from taking the vaccine, who developed blood clots and or had a heart attack or what have you, heart conditions. And COVID is known to affect some like that. The problem I have is the government is so Mickey Mousing this thing. Here we are 2 years into this, and they keep telling us, well, take this shot. Well, then take this shot. No, now the third one. And then I know people who've had all three, gotten COVID, very sick, gone to the hospital. I have a couple friends, one right now comes to my mind who's in the hospital, who had all three shots. And oh, no, you won't have it. It won't be as serious. Where's the science for that? People can talk about science. Where's the scientific evidence? So I'm concerned about that they're forcing people to take the shots in certain areas, in certain professions, certain companies and or governmental agencies or the military. And for some people, it is literally life-threatening. I mean, there is plenty of evidence that people literally have died from getting the shots. You may say, well, that's pretty rare. Well, look, you know what? If you're the rare person that dies, it doesn't help them or their family. So you can keep that to yourself, in my opinion. How can you say, well, it's rare. Okay, the person who died, tell that to them and their family, as I said. But my point is, Daryl, I think how the government has handled this is really bad. I think we're giving up all types of freedoms. I think that we're messing. I think there's total government overreach. I'm glad it's finally got to the Supreme Court, although some of the dumb things some of the justices have said, I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't a good thing. They don't seem to even understand the science behind this. I'm like, wow, this could be really bad. But we're giving up all types of freedoms. And I think the issue of wanting to track people and in the name of health, and we've got to be able to, see who interact with whom else and pass this on, that's what's disconcerting to me. And how quickly the churches were willing to shut down and stop even meeting together at all. Now, again, for other people, I'm willing to social distance, willing to wear a mask. I've had my shot, so if you think I'm an anti-vaxxer, go somewhere else because I've already had the shots. So don't give me that. And I got sick of the dog, by the way, from him, and I already had COVID. But at any rate, I'm really concerned. I think they're trying to make people violate their conscience. There's issues with fetal tissues used in the development, if not in some of the vaccines, but minimally the development of it. There's just a number of matters of conscience that they're requiring that people violate their conscience, and it's just so I'm very concerned. Because I see the government, in my opinion, government overreach. Look at what's going on in Australia. Those guys are freaked out. Yeah. And Austria, not to be confused with Australia, but they've had draconian measures of who can and can't leave your house, when you can do it, how far you can go, all this stuff. This is crazy. I mean, there are risks. Look, if you're so concerned about dying, then quit driving 65 even. You probably really should never go over about 35 miles an hour. If you want to try to make sure you don't die, get everybody to drive under 35. Well, why don't we mandate nobody can drive anywhere on any freeway, let's say in America, over 35? Because the scientific evidence is exponential. The faster you go, there's more deaths and grave bodily injuries. If you're so concerned about people dying, and again, I'm not saying we shouldn't be, but then let's just drastically reduce the speed limit. But you don't do it. So the hypocrisy and the inconsistency and the lack of scientific rigor with some of the nonsensical claims that are made, and I'm talking about the CDC and other officials, and the CDC and other related health organizations get overall trillions of dollars a year, and this is the best they can do. Pretty sad. My humble opinion.
Other than that, you don't really have too much of an opinion about the mandates.
I have no opinion.
No, look, I'm not going to give mine. I'll just simply say this: to the degree that there's government that's have much trouble with regulating the various policies and laws they have in place already, not doing a very good job with that. I'm a kind of a limited government type guy to the degree that we'd have limited government outside the protecting of the people, the borders, and things like that. They really infringe upon your rights and your freedoms, and you have to be very careful who you give your freedoms up to. Like I said, I've been in the court system many years ago, and I used to see people waive their rights because I knew good and well we had a system. If nobody would ever waive their rights, we could not get too much done in the court system. So we should be working on a better way to sort of like mandate our lives as individuals and the freedoms we have. Like you were saying, Craig, you care for your fellow person. I mean, to the degree that is. I won't get into what I did and what I didn't do, but all I know is they made me get insurance before I left this country to go to another country, and then they didn't require a negative test at all. But for me to come back into my own country, they required a negative test of COVID for me. But I'm saying, wait a minute, that's sort of backwards for the insurance company. If I did get COVID out there, man, I'll be living a life of luxury because that's a $50,000 policy plus another 20, 30 days of vacationing. I'm retired, so I don't vacation just where I was at. So it's very strange. We don't have it all together as man, but we just need to hold on to the rights we have and be very careful of all the overkill, and I'm calling it overkill, of the government as far as the mandates and the requirements. They just had a big fight in Burger King in New York just the other day I heard about. I'm going, why? Because somebody wouldn't put on the mask. Man.
Yeah, right. And so, Daryl, I would argue, I've actually talked to folks who've asked me to help them or give my comments, because I teach ethics. That's part of my background. So, yeah, you could say I'm an ethicist, if you will. I don't just dabble.
Good for you to say.
No, I try to teach ethics to a future attorney. So,
there you go. Yeah.
Some say it's an oxymoron.
I'm going to leave that alone.
But I would argue there are legitimate grounds for being a conscientious objector to getting the vaccines, plural, literally. So I think there are, but I'll even use a political argument, which I think has become a moral argument. And it was interesting. I heard my dean as well at the law school form of dean where I teach, give the same argument. He said, look, basically since the 1700s, our view of government has been forever changed in America, given the Constitution and our form of government. You know, the Bible says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We're to obey the government. We are the government.
Thank you.
We're not a democracy, so quit saying that. We're a representative form of government, right? But we elect representatives who are supposed to, what a thought, represent us. They might try doing that sometime, actually. But the point is, given that, and given that there really is something called government overreach, where the government, a given branch of government, takes powers into itself that it shouldn't have, given the alleged split of the executive, judicial, and legislative branches, of course, take into account media, the fourth branch of government.
Okay,
now. The argument is
you slipped that one in there.
But the argument is we are Caesar,
yes.
And if people in government, even government officials themselves, if and when, and they do, so it's when, not just if, overreach and take to themselves powers that they're not entitled to, it now becomes an ethical argument. So let me just say this. Some Christians who mean well but simplistically say, oh, you should obey the government. You can't disobey the government. I am the government.
Yes.
You are the government. And you could say, well, yeah, you just can't steal and cheat. And I say, of course not. But when the government violates basic principles of due process and freedoms and rights we've been given in the Bill of Rights and otherwise, then it now becomes a moral argument. I cannot in certain areas, I cannot enable a government that is doing unethical things, that is violating its own constitutional constitutional rights.
Yes.
Is trampling upon rights. I'm actually aiding and abetting a renegade government.
A rogue.
That's
You're rogue.
Look, I know. But look at. I'll use the example. Look at in Acts, right, when they're told not to preach in the name of Jesus, and Peter and John say, "You tell us whether it's right to obey you or to obey God."
Indeed.
And so there are times when the government forbids what God commands, or the government commands what God forbids, and there are times when it's my duty to disobey. Now, I take the consequences. I believe in civil disobedience. That means if there's penalties, then so be it. Then I take those. But and I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about peaceful civil disobedience. That's what I'm talking about in context. But so I believe there is actually a theological, ethical argument dealing with governmental issues and the government abusing, violating our constitutional rights. And it's something that more Christians need to start thinking about. You might actually try reading the Constitution. Read your Bible first, but then read the Constitution, and then some of the dialogues about it, like the Federalist Papers or what have you, about basic rights that the government has given us, which I believe that because of COVID, many governments at the municipal, state, and federal level are trampling our basic rights.
Indeed.
Legal, civil, and human rights are the three big categories.
Now, being the ethicist that you are, the one that deals with ethics, I can't even say the word halfway right, but let me just throw this question out there and we'll move on. PCH, because you mentioned the Constitution, you mentioned individuals, and I'm going to throw this phraseology about the religious exemption. I've had many people ask me about it, and I simply told them my understanding of any religious exemption is not predicated upon the belief system of your particular belief system, not a group. It's not a group thing. You have a constitutional right as individuals. It's not mama, daddy, the family, the city, the state. It is your individual constitutional right. So your religious exemption is predicated upon where you're coming from. You said it earlier, as your conscience sake. Can you correct me on that ethically, PCH, on how it's being taught and what it is actually?
Well, it does exist, and I'll just say this, Daryl, because there's a lot here. I'm so thankful for organizations like Pacific Justice Institute, headed by Brad Dacus. Pacific Justice Institute. In fact, they're representing actually someone I've known since high school, who was fired from Trader Joe's, who was a manager, a loyal and a hardworking employee, who basically, Daryl, what happened was he, for religious reasons, and under the religious exemption, requested to be, excused from having to take the vaccine.
Right.
But he said, look, I get it. I'll wear a mask. I will be tested regularly.
Sure.
At intervals. And then at first they gave it to him, and then they basically said, But as a manager, you have to come to the managerial meetings they have in the various levels, and then a big annual one. And at any rate, but we won't let you come. And he said, "Well, okay, but can I Zoom? You've done that in the past, or can I have within 24 hours, give a test to show that I'm negative?" They said no, and then he simply had a law firm he didn't threaten them. All he said was, "Look, here is my client's rights given the religious exemption," and they said he was now becoming adversarial, and they fired him. They're going to lose. I'm telling you, I'm arguing they're going to lose big time, and they ought to. So there are many companies that are challenging people's religious exemption, but Pacific Justice Institute on their website has a great form, and other organizations do as well, of points one should make in asking for a religious exemption. And I'm proud to say, actually, I know a number of people who are involved in class action lawsuits and or other types of lawsuits against various companies and the government because they would not grant them religious exemption. And even just like a conscientious objector when it comes to, let's say, fighting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether I agree with them or not. I think there is at least those who believe that it's morally wrong and it violates their conscience, and they should be given an exemption. But these people are not being given that exemption, and so I'm so glad they're suing the government and or suing various companies and other agencies for their rights. Christians need to be more proactive. We're just being passive and letting the government run all over us and trample our constitutional rights. I think we ought to use the courts. That's what I'm talking about, using the courts, use the legal arena as we should to champion what's right, just, good, and true. And when even our government goes rogue, read Thomas Hobbes, read Leviathan. Yeah. I teach this stuff. Sometimes the government cannibalizes its own people, and the government needs to be dealt with legally. And we need to do it as a Christian. I'm going to do it through the Constitution and show that they're violating my constitutional rights.
And well, we should step up because, like you said before, bottom line, we are the government, and to whatever degree things stay the way we don't like them is because of our apathetic ways of handling it. I know it takes a lot of organization.
And we go on and let them get away with it.
Exactly. Well, I tell you what, one thing we're not going to get away with is another question from Facebook. Christopher, hang in there. We're going to get to your call in a second. We just dealt with quite a few minutes about COVID, and I know other people are going to be calling in about COVID in regards to that, so we may direct you towards our website on the second hour to hear about our answers about COVID. But let me give you a question from Johnny. Johnny is on Facebook as well, and the question is very interesting. To me, it's interesting. It's saying that I know the Bible is not a book focused on a scientific cosmology, but did the Jews ever indicate that God revealed to them that the earth rotated or that it orbited the sun? Not a doctrinal question, but curious about the historical science of ancient Israelites.
Yeah, we can debate. There does seem to be some passages that talk about the earth rotating, and we do see that the Bible in Isaiah talks about the earth being spherical.
Spherical, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And look, the Bible's never taught a geocentric solar system, that is, the earth being the center, right? Some people thought literally it was the sun and everything orbiting us when we know it's the exact opposite. So the Bible's not a science book. It's not a biology or geology or astronomy textbook, but it doesn't teach anything that's wrong either. And there's a reason I'm emphasizing this, and there's a number. I have dozens of books on science in the Bible, and by many of them leading scientists today, mathematicians, scientists, from astronomers to biologists to what have you, Daryl. These are key areas of interest to me. And some of the best in the world are actually committed Christians. So this idea Christians are anti-science and just into mythology, that itself is mythological.
Wow.
That's just nonsense.
Too many hospitals, Greg. Too many hospitals came out because of who Christians are.
Yes. Well, the major universities in the Western world are almost all of them related originally to Christianity.
Yeah.
Because the clergy believe that people should be educated. They should be able to read the Bible. They believe it's to the glory of God to be a knowledgeable, educated person at any rate. Indeed, even if you study jurisprudence in the Western world, and particularly Great Britain and America, you see the incredible Judeo-Christian influence. You can read a guy named Harold Berman, who taught at Harvard for years in the law school, and a number of his books. One of them is called The Revolution in Law, and he talks about these matters and documents much of it. But to the point here, Daryl, if some say, well, this doesn't really matter. The Bible is not a scientific textbook. You said that, so who cares? But here's why you should care. Because if the Bible where I can check things is wrong, why would I trust it in areas where I can't check it? In other words, you claim to be or know a great financial advisor, and you tell me I invest my life savings or otherwise with this person or persons or corporation or company, what have you. And yet, everywhere I can check where they've been involved in giving financial advice, they've actually bankrupted the people, or at least minimally didn't make any money. Worst case scenario, they lost everything. Why in the world would I trust them? So if the Bible is wrong in all the areas I can check, why would I trust it that it knows what it's talking about when it talks about ultimate issues like an afterlife and so on and so forth? So there's a reason. If the Bible can't be trusted in those levels, then how would you trust it on spiritual matters? You can't divorce the physical world from the spiritual. They go hand in hand. And again, if somebody wants, I have full bibliographies on this type of stuff and some phenomenal books on science. And again, classically, through history in the Western world at least, Daryl, most of the leading scientists were all committed Christians. There's whole books on this stuff. And again, there's many great scientists today. That's why I chuckle when I hear this. Oh, Christians are anti-scientists. They're just into, mythology and, folklore and all that. And it's like, no, again, the folklore and mythology are the claims like that. I'm not saying all Christians are scientific, but I'm saying there's plenty of them. And they teach at places like MIT and Caltech and other schools you might have heard of, Oxford, Cambridge, what have you.
Yeah, there's a few of them out there. It's just amazing to me that a creator of the universe that revealed what he wanted to be revealed to us and did it through the Word of God, well, then some kind of way who created all this stuff, where we getting all the science from, because we're examining his stuff. It's just kind of like kind of weird that you wouldn't think that it'd be about science and what degree that we're going to do a science report from the Bible. No, but I'll tell you one thing that's very interesting to me, that when they find these archaeological digs, I'm really curious, Craig, this is just my curiosity, is in all the letters that the various kings and people were writing, especially when they was rebuilding the temple after Nebuchadnezzar, with my wife and I was talking about that today. I would love to be able to find some of these letters or even copies of the letters that was given to various kings and the various kingdoms out there. That's interesting to me. I'm sure they're out there, but I just would love to just have one in my hand and just examine it.
People, we revel in our ignorance sometimes. So you keep loading my gun on this.
I think I'm popping you off like that. I'm setting you up to all these things.
Yeah, in the 1900s, up into the 1960s, they were saying things like this. Well, in the book of Acts, there's a letter from one of the governors addressing Nero. Mm-hmm. And in the text, in the Greek letter, it calls him Kurios, which is the Greek word for Lord. It can be master, mister, sir, or, the Lord. Kurios, K-Y or K-U-R-I-O-S, transliterated. And so the armchair intellectual said, oh, this is obviously fictitious because we know. How do they know? Because of their speculations. We know that Caesars were never called Kurios. That doesn't exist. And then Adolf Deisman and some others doing archaeological research actually came up with a number of letters written right around the same time that the individual in the book of Acts would have written his letter to Caesar, and they referred to they're directly writing to Caesar over some legal issues. And Daryl, take a wild guess what they call him.
Oh, would it be Curios?
Yeah, they call him Curios. Yeah. If you're curious. So the point is, I always chuckle because people think they know so much when they're really just showing their ignorance. They say this couldn't have happened, or this, we didn't know this. The Bible is wrong. When in fact it proves to be painstakingly accurate, and the very thing we were assured by the higher critics didn't exist, when in fact it was a normal practice. And people like Adolf Deisman and others, like in his classic book Light from the Ancient East, documents this. And so, again, I don't put a lot of stock in even so-called intellectuals, because a lot of it is, as someone who's taught at the university for almost 33 years now, a lot of it is faddish. Even intellectuals are into fads. They often mock what they call John and Joan Q. Public, the hoi polloi. But I tell you, they believe some pretty nincompoop-ish ideas. Some of the things that pass for knowledge are just total nonsense.
Well, I'm telling you something. This is interesting because I did post today along with my daily Bible reading chronologically through the Bible on day number 9 here. So if you're not reading the Bible through, you should take opportunity just to click on our website, or not our website, but our Facebook page, and get the daily readings that I post chronologically, talking about, we're reading in day 9 today, Job 21 to 23. But something else I posted, Craig, and I just happened to go through it. I found it on the Bible Gateway, and I just posted a link whereby R.C. Sproul and his group was talking about, can I trust the Bible? And it gives maybe about 10 at the most 9-minute vignettes about the various subjects about why you can trust the Bible. If you're interested, go to our Facebook page, click that resource, check it out, because some of the things that you've already said in the past, Craig, and even saying now, why the Bible is reliable, and even talking about the science situation there, and talk about the various ways the Bible speaks, the metaphors, the hyperbole, the various languages. This is a literal book. How did Robert Bowman say that at the symposium, talking about the literary book? I can't even. I know what I want to say, but I don't want to mess it up. So, matter of fact, is our symposium up yet? Do we have that thing posted on our website yet, Craig, that you know of?
I believe, if not all of it, most of it's posted.
Well, check out the part where Bowman was talking about the Bible being a literal book and how we should understand it and read it. And then at the same time, go ahead and check out Can I Trust the Bible with R.C. Sproul and his group. God bless his soul. Anyway, PCAs, let's go back to the phone call we have from Christopher. We only have about 15 minutes left, or not even that much. I think 10 minutes left on the broadcast. Can't believe it's gone that fast. Let's go to Christopher in Watts. How you doing, Christopher?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for calling in, brother. What's your question for the night?
My question is, okay, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In the beginning was Christ. He helped in creation, and then he came back as a second man, as a second Adam, in the incarnation. Where in the Bible do it talk about Christ coming back to the earth, and why do he need to come back to the earth when everything that he's done the second time was fulfilled in him? So what else do he need to fulfill? So where do the third coming of Christ come back, and where do they talk about that in the Bible?
That's an interesting question, because you mentioned the third coming of Christ, which I never heard of, but PCH, what say you about this third coming of Christ, and was the actual in the beginning was the Word and being Christ? Does that count as though Jesus was actually physically on earth doing something in his creation?
Mm-hmm. Well, Christopher is asking some great questions. So a number of passages, for example, in Matthew chapter 24, Matthew 25 talks about this. Now, Christopher is right. I'm not disagreeing that Christ completed his work. But did you say, then why would he come back? Well, it's the application. That is, this world is not really currently accountable to Christ in the sense of God ruling and reigning directly and bringing things in light of godliness. So Christ, he's not coming back to finish the work of the atonement or of our salvation, but it's the application thereof. You may have, I don't know if you've ever done this, I paid for things and then they're mailed to me and I'm still waiting for them to be delivered. There's nothing else for me to do, but they've got to be delivered or otherwise there's things that are true and we've simply not received them or applied them yet, if you will, whether in the mail or not. Another passage would be 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. That would be another key one, talking about the second coming of Christ. So there are actually dozens of passages, I've just mentioned just 3 of them, where it talks about Christ's second coming, and it is because he's coming back this time, Christopher, as you probably well know, not to make atonement, not to pay the penalty for our sins, that's already been done, but he is coming back to rule and reign upon the earth and ultimately in heaven, or the new heavens and the new earth, I should say.
Yeah.
It is the application of the actual reigning of Christ. So there is in theology what we call an already not yet. And I know it sounds like double talk, but already not yet means something is already done, like you've paid for it, but you're still waiting for it to be delivered. And so it is. Christ has paid. He owns everything, lock, stock, and barrel. And someday he's coming back to claim it. And that's, I guess, what I would say in the brief time that we have.
Christopher, I hope that's helpful to you, brother, because it definitely was to me. God bless you, man. Call back again, please.
Thanks, sir.
You're very welcome. PCH.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. It is a great question. You know what? I'm going to do a real quick opportunity for the people to give financially, and I'm going to be real fast with that because I want to get into these last 3 or 4, well, maybe about 5 minutes we have left in the broadcast and talk about this subject matter that came to my mind and was dealing with it as far as Christian cliches. So think of 2 or 3 cliches as I give the information about giving, and we're going to come back and deal with some of the ones you know, and is it biblically correct or in context or not. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, as PCH is thinking about some biblical cliches or Christian cliches that he have heard over his lifetime in Christianity, I'll give you a privilege and opportunity to be able to participate in the giving. What I mean, easy, this is what I mean. You can support this broadcast by going to our website right now. Simply go to our website, BibleInfoBrokers.com, Bible Info Brokers, and you can click that support and donate button, follow those very simple instructions. My secret way of giving to ministries, because I just don't like paying extra fees for anything, is to simply go to my online presence on the bank account that I have and then give that way. Give my bank instructions to just send the money that way, Zelle it or what have you. Whatever way we can do it where the fees are not being paid, that's easy way. Not just me as a nickname, but easy way as far as actually to do it. And it saves money on stamps, mailing out things, have to go to the post office and all that type of stuff. Your bank would actually mail the check to us if you set it up with your bank. The other way you can do it, if you like to write the checks out, the same way, no fees if you write a check. See, no fees, so we get all that extra money on the fees. I know the people that, we have this little platforms with, they charge fees. They may be mad at me, but guess what? So what? You can actually write a check out or money order to Living by the Word, write it out to Living by the Word, and then mail it to P.O. Box 90477, 90477 in Los Angeles, 90009. Once again, Living by the Word, write the check out and mail it to money order, and then mail it to P.O. Box 90477 in Los Angeles, 90009. PCH, we only have about 4 or 5 minutes left. Got to get in these cliches, man. It's just been on my heart to deal with this, and you know what I'm talking about. People, I have heard so many different cliches that people connect to God, connect to the Bible, that I want to run it past the professor's plethora of brilliance in the mind on the various books you read and the Bible as you've read it, and let's verify these cliches if they're actually biblically sound or not, in context or not, and maybe we should get away from these so-called cliches if need be. You got one for me?
God help those who help themselves.
Well, how biblical is that? Why is it not that? If you don't work, you don't eat, and God is going to help you work so you can eat.
First of all, it's not in the Bible. Third, 5:9 or otherwise. Second of all, I mean, there are some truths in one sense.
Yeah.
We are to work, and for example, I don't just sit home and pray that God will provide for my family financially. I work. And so there is a sense of God can still bless your work and all that. But the idea when it comes to salvation that, well, you do your part and God will do his. God will help you if you show him some, ingenuity and energy and whatever. And that's just not true. God does for us many times what we cannot do for ourselves. In fact, maybe the main things God does for us are the things we cannot do for ourselves. So the idiom as it's often used, God helps those that help themselves, is singularly unhelpful.
Okay, all right. Well, let me
bad pun intended.
Nah, I got you. Let me throw this one at you for the preachers. I know the preachers go through a lot of stuff. The preachers that are doing a good job, and the preachers that may not necessarily doing a great job, but they're still preachers nonetheless. And I've heard it said that you should be careful how you deal with your preacher, because you should not do your preacher no harm, because somehow God's gonna get on your case. In other words, he actually used a biblical verse. I was trying to find it. I don't remember what it is. I just know there's something about do the preacher or do the pastor no harm. Do you know about that one?
Well, yes, this is a half-truth. Yeah, I mean, we should never do anybody
of course.
harm. And by harm, I mean unjustified, harm. I mean, harming somebody in the sense of slandering them or physically accosting them or otherwise. I'm not supposed to do that to anybody. It's not just the pastor. It's like, it's okay to murder, but just not the pastor. No, it's all wrong, period. But the problem is that's often taken from when David was being pursued by Saul, and twice he had the chance to harm him. And he said he would not touch the Lord's anointed.
Ah, yeah, there you go.
Then you apply that. Like, don't touch the Lord's anointed. God will not hold him guiltless. But the context is he wouldn't kill him. And so, your congregation shouldn't kill you. I agree. But they don't have the right to speak out. And if you're doing things wrong, if you're unethical, if you're immoral, if you're unbiblical in your teaching, they have not only the right but the duty to call you out and to say, do the pastor no harm, or
touch God's not anointed.
Yeah, is clearly out of context.
Okay. You think you're on a roll. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm giving you an opportunity. We'll use these next week. Just send in all the cliches that you know in Christendom since you've been living and been a Christian, or you've heard, even if you're an unbeliever. Send in those cliches. We want to deal with them and dispel the correctness or incorrectness of those things. Now, Craig, this is similar to what you and I talked about privately about that so-called, what did I say, eisegetically correct and exegetically correct. We won't deal with that. That's a little bit too deep right now. But I'm going to give you this one last one because we only have like 2 minutes left. Cleanliness is next to godliness, one of my favorites. Straighten us out.
Yeah, cleanliness is just a good idea unless you're phobic. Unless you're
yeah.
Obsessive compulsive disorder. I mean, there are people kind of like the TV program Monk, the guy's OCD.
Yeah, that was a good show.
And a hypochondriac and a clean freak. But being clean is generally a good thing. Washing your hands is just a smart move in general, not just because of COVID. All kinds of things, but just being clean in and of itself is godliness. No, there were serial killers who were really into cleanliness. That doesn't mean it's of God. So that's another cliche that is half baked and is in many contexts is simply not true.
Well,
I'll tell you what is true.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Daryl.
No, you go ahead. Tell me what's true. Because we only have about 90 seconds left.
Here's what I know. Another year's upon us. I'm going to be another year old, should the Lord tarry. I lived that long. And it doesn't mean life's over, but it means I want to make my life count for eternity. I want to make my life worth something. Daryl, I'm not 80 or 90. My dad's going to be 94 in 2 weeks. But I'm not even 50 anymore. So the point is, I know that this life is going by. It's fleeting. It's going by much faster than I ever thought it would. And I want to make it count. I want to invest in eternity, and I hope our brothers and sisters who listen to this program are doing just that. Invest in God and His kingdom and the gospel and people, and you will never be sorry.
Indeed. PCH, again, another blessed privilege to be doing this broadcast with you, Eric, Gabe, and Brian. Thanks for calling in. My name is Daryl E.Z.D. Fulton. Yes, you're right. My Mama Grace and Big Daddy's baby boy, saying the Lord willing, we'll be back next week with more of the Bible Information Brokers. Please, 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 on your Facebook page, share the broadcast. Don't wait till the Sunday to send your question in. Read the Bible through chronologically on our Facebook page. Look at all the resources we have at the BibleInformationBrokers.com website. And if the Lord is willing, Craig, we'll be back next week. God bless.